You won't believe how these celebrities went from having it all to having nothing. These people were super famous, but not anymore. Number 15. Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson was hot property in Hollywood after starring in the original Mad Max trilogy. After making an even bigger name for himself in Lethal Weapon and directing his own hits, he totally blew it. It all started going wrong when word got out about his aggressive public outburst and his rudeness to fans and journalists. But it all boiled over when he started making shocking anti-Semitic comments. We won't repeat exactly what he said, but we will say it wasn't good. After a DUI arrest in 2006, it looks like there's no bouncing back for Mel. His career is pretty much over, and frankly, it was 100% his own fault. Mel Gibson ruined his career by upsetting his fans. That's the worst thing a celebrity can do. The next person on our list made the second worst mistake a star can make, but it had the same result. Number 14. Charlie Sheen. For a while, the biggest show on TV was 2.5 Men.
That's the cornerstone of a healthy relationship.
How are we going to compromise, Charlie? Are you going to have sex with half a woman?
It got so big, it even had huge audiences outside of America. And along with the show, star Charlie Sheen's fame totally exploded. He was one of the most recognizable faces on the planet, but some people just don't handle fame very well. He started having serious problems with substance abuse, and he couldn't even give it a break while on set. The production crew later claimed they couldn't handle his erratic behavior. When he started clashing with producers of the show, it was one step too far. They were pretty much forced to fire him. That was a pretty big blow, because he'd been earning a whopping $2 million per episode. Nobody else was going to hire an actor they couldn't rely on, and they definitely weren't going to pay him as much as he'd made from 2.5 Men. Since then, he's floated into obscurity. Charlie Sheen admitted to his bad behavior, but the next person on our list was behaving even worse. Number 13. Shia LaBeouf. Shia LaBeouf had one of the most spectacular public meltdowns Hollywood has ever seen. He basically ruined his career by being a jerk to everyone. He's well known for screaming at people in public and starting fights. He also loves publicly talking about hookups, and he apparently treated his girlfriends really badly. When FKA Twigs filed a lawsuit against him for emotional and physical abuse, his past girlfriends all came forward to back her up. It turned out they'd all been through the same thing. But it's not just his personal life where he shows his nasty side. As a professional, he made headlines when he openly plagiarized a comic by legendary writer Daniel Clowes and turned it into a short film. Not only did he not have the rights to the work, he also didn't credit Clowes at all. As if that wasn't bad enough, LaBeouf then spent the next years mocking Clowes on Twitter and attempting to steal more of his work. It seems like even lawyers are confused about how to deal with this weird behavior, but Clowes says he's forgiven Shia anyway. I'm not sure he deserves it. What Shia did was a pretty weird way to end his career, but the next story on our list is even crazier. Number 12. Armie Hammer. Celebrated star of Call Me By Your Name, Armie Hammer seemed to be heading to his rise to the top that he'd been working toward for over 10 years. But after his divorce was announced, things got weird. A controversial story captivated the world when allegations of abusive behavior were released onto the internet, along with screenshots of messages involving violent and cannibalistic fantasies that Armie apparently sent to his new girlfriends.
Armie Hammer on Facebook. He abused me mentally, emotionally.
He voluntarily stepped away from several movies before being dropped by even more while a police investigation against him was started. In the end, the police said they couldn't prove a lack of consent, and they dropped the charges. So, was any of it true? We'll probably never know, but the story was mind-blowing enough to spread like wildfire and seriously damage Armie's public image. Especially because he never denied the texts were from him. He'll need to do a lot of work if he wants to repair his Hollywood career. But he might never be allowed into the spotlight again. Number 11. O.J. Simpson. O.J. Simpson was one of the biggest stars on Earth. He made his name as a professional football player before taking on the role of actor and entertainer. He had legions of adoring fans. Until 1995. Suddenly, he went from being a hero to many to taking on the starring role in one of the most high-profile criminal trials in the history of America. The whole world was watching, but this was no act. OJ's ex-wife and her friend, Ronald Goldman, were both dead. It was serious. Fans felt betrayed by a man who they thought could do no wrong. In the end, his clever lawyer somehow convinced the jury to doubt the claims, and OJ was acquitted of the charges. Largely, the public wasn't on his side, and he seemed to do his best to disappear after that. And he's not the only famous star who might have gotten away with something bad. The next star on our list was also declared innocent, but a lot of people still aren't convinced. Number 10. Kevin Spacey. Kevin Spacey was widely considered one of the best actors in Hollywood. But that didn't save him when accusations of sexual misconduct emerged during the #MeToo movement. He only made it worse by coming out as gay after being accused of aggressive behavior toward men. Normally, coming out is mostly celebrated these days, but in this case, the LGBTQ+ community weren't too happy about the way Spacey connected being gay to bad behavior. He was accused of using it to try to overshadow serious allegations. House of Cards producers decided to drop him from his celebrated starring role, and he was rapidly losing support from his fans. Recently, he was declared innocent in a UK court, but it seems most people disagree with the judgment, so rebuilding his career may be impossible. We're kinda used to celebrities committing crimes these days, but this next celeb decided to stage one instead. Number 9. Jussie Smollett. Jussie Smollett, star of hit show Empire, had one of the weirdest career downfalls in history. In January 2019, Jussie walked into a Chicago police department to report something horrifying. He'd been the victim of an attack. He claimed it was a hate crime relating to his race and sexual orientation. The world was shocked, and everyone hoped the police would be able to catch the perpetrators. They got what they wished for, except nobody was expecting the criminal to be Jussie himself. It turned out the attack was staged. Jussie had planned the entire thing and used two brothers to help him pull it off. He was convicted for the crime, but even worse, the public was 100% not on his side. The stunt didn't go down well with fans, who felt it made a mockery of genuinely serious crimes, all for the sake of publicity. It looks like nobody wants to see Jussie back on our screens anytime soon. If you're starting to think it's only modern celebrities who ruin their perfect careers, you're wrong. The next person on our list proves this has been happening for ages. Number 8. Sly Stone. Sly Stone became a superstar after he shot to fame in the late 1960s as the frontman and band leader of Sly and the Family Stone. The groundbreaking band was celebrated for their unique blend of funk, rock, soul, and gospel, and they were way ahead of their time with a racially and gender-diverse lineup. But it was Sly's incredible talent that led to their commercial success. Unfortunately, he didn't handle the fame well. He developed a drug addiction that caused the band to break up in 1975. Still, he was famous enough that he could marry his girlfriend on stage in front of a packed Madison Square Garden audience. He tried to launch a solo career, but it never really worked. He was still struggling with his addiction, and his drug-fueled behavior led to clashes with his manager. That meant he lost access to his royalty payments for years. That was the final blow. With no money coming in, he ended up homeless. He lived in a mobile home for years, depending on welfare checks to buy food. He's since made some weird appearances and won a court case over publishing rights, so he might have more money, but his career hasn't recovered. But on the plus side, he was never hated, unlike the next person on our list. Number 7. Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby was loved for his comedic talent all over the world. Now he's hated by pretty much everyone. At first, everyone was shocked when allegations started emerging, but now his terrifying behavior is all anyone thinks of when they hear his name. Unlike some stars on our list, Cosby was actually convicted of 3 counts of aggravated indecent assault and sentenced to prison. For someone who was once known as America's dad, the fall from grace is one of the most shocking in the history of Hollywood. But Bill Cosby isn't the only comedy superstar who dragged his own name through the mud. Just ask number 6, Michael Richards. Seinfeld superstar Michael Richards might hold the record for the fastest end to a career of all time. And it all took place live on stage. It was 2006, and he was performing to huge, adoring audiences. This fateful night, they were laughing at every joke and totally on his side, except for one member of the audience who either heckled or was talking to a friend while Richards was on stage. Comedians usually have a set of responses for dealing with difficult audience members. They pretty much expect a heckler or two. But if Richards had done that planning, he made the terrible decision to go off script. Instead of a normal joke at a heckler's expense, Richards responded by shouting a string of racial slurs at the man and saying that if he'd done that 50 years earlier, they'd have hanged him upside down with a fork where the sun don't shine.
Hello! 50 years ago, they had you upside down with a fucking fork up your ass!
More and more audience members stopped laughing and started walking out. You can't sweep that kind of thing under the rug these days. Obviously, one audience member captured the shocking tirade on video, and it quickly found its way onto YouTube for the entire world to see. I can guarantee that everyone who saw the video kinda wished they'd been in the audience so they could have walked out too. It was such a weird thing to do. It was almost like he was trying to ruin his career. At least the next person on the list had a more traditional burnout. Number 5, Amanda Bynes. Amanda Bynes was the most famous face on kids' TV for years, but child stars almost always have problems eventually. Her career could have survived the drug and alcohol abuse because audiences are pretty sympathetic with young people. But the crazy public meltdown on Twitter after she was arrested for DUIs was harder to ignore. The weird tweets included attacking Miley Cyrus and Jay-Z for being unattractive. She also said she wanted Drake to, quote, murder her vagina, end quote. But her worst accusation was directed at Rihanna. She blamed her for the public abuse she suffered, saying Chris Brown had hit her because she wasn't pretty enough. People did not like that statement. She then topped off her meltdown by setting fire to her parents' neighbor's driveway and accidentally catching her own pants on fire too. Lucky for her, she seems to have got her life back on track. We're glad to see she's doing better now and is focusing on a career in fashion. But her career as a star is definitely over. There's no doubt Amanda's meltdown was crazy, but we've seen stars do that kind of thing before. The next story on our list doesn't fall into that category. It's a unique story even in the craziness of Hollywood. Number 4, Robert Blake. Robert Blake had a career stretching for most of 70 years. He started as a child star and went on to work as the iconic mystery man in Lost Highway for David Lynch, one of the most celebrated directors in the business. Lynch could have made him an even bigger star if Blake's career hadn't come to a sudden stop. Soon after that film, a bizarre incident happened in Studio City, LA. Blake and his wife had been enjoying a meal at a restaurant before they returned to their car parked around the corner. Blake told his wife he'd somehow lost his gun while they were eating, and he needed to go back and look for it. Because that's a totally normal thing to lose in a restaurant, right? She got into the car to wait while he went back. Sometime between Blake leaving her and returning to the car, someone shot his wife in the head at point-blank range. The police proved that the gun Blake had gone back to find was not the one used in the crime. But he was back in hot water when 2 stuntmen came forward the next year to tell police something interesting. According to them, Blake had tried to hire both of them to kill his wife for him. Their history of drug use meant Blake's lawyers could discredit them in the trial, and Blake went free. But when he was sued by his wife's children for $30 million, the court agreed he'd intentionally caused her death. He later started begging producers for work, but nobody wanted to go near him for obvious reasons. We don't know if he did it or not, but Hollywood isn't taking the chance. You don't have to commit a terrible crime to lose your career, though. Sometimes all you need to do is make one mistake. That's what happened to the next star on our list. Number 3. Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman became world famous for his incredible basketball skills as much as his controversial persona. In 2006, Rodman had 23 rebounds in a single game, which broke a record at the time, but he didn't slow down. Soon, he was a wrestler, actor, and reality TV star, and he was on top of the world. He had no idea his problems had already started. He had gotten involved with a woman named Peggy Ann Fulford, not realizing she was actually a con woman. Fulford posed as a financial advisor to scam Rodman and a whole group of his fellow athletes out of millions of dollars. He lost so much money that he couldn't afford to pay for child support, which made it even worse. Eventually, the courts ordered Fulford to pay $1 million to Rodman, but everyone agrees he probably won't see a cent from her. While he was fighting that battle and trying to get his personal life back on track, his career suffered badly, and he wasn't able to restore it, even though he was such a big star. It's a pretty sad way to lose a career, but the next person on our list totally deserved to have his taken away. Number 2. Mark Salling. Everyone of a certain age will remember Puck from Glee. After all, it was the biggest show on Earth for a while. Mark became a bit of a sensation as the jock, an essential character in a TV high school. But even among a popular cast, Mark became a sensation because everyone loves the sexy villain. But if you had a crush on him, we need to warn you that this story is gonna make you feel a little dirty. In 2015, one of Salling's ex-girlfriends called the police to tell them that he was distributing porn, starring children. Yes, it's as bad as it sounds. Police got a search warrant, and they had a pretty easy time finding the evidence they were looking for. They searched his laptop, a USB drive, and a hard drive, and pulled up about 50,000 videos and pictures. The children were only 5 to 12 years old. Obviously, he was immediately dropped by the producers of his next show. All he had to do after that was focus on the legal problems he was now facing. He agreed to a plea deal. But the case never got that far because Salling committed suicide in a canyon in California before his sentencing. Okay, we know that story escalated fast. Let's bring the mood back with a beloved star from the 80s. Number 1. Jennifer Grey. Nobody puts Baby in a corner. But star Jennifer Grey, who played the iconic Baby from Dirty Dancing, seemed to disappear after the film. Why did her co-star Patrick Swayze become a household name while she faded into the background? Well, she made one really bad decision. In the 90s, her career as an actor started to slow down just a little. Normally, it's a good idea to listen to your mom's advice, but this time the advice was terrible. Her mom had suggested she get a nose job to make her more traditionally attractive like other famous actresses. Jennifer listened. She got 2 nose jobs, but the second one was mainly to fix the terrible results of the first one. But it didn't matter what the results were in the end. Even the good nose job made her totally unrecognizable. That's the last thing you want as a famous actress, and it was pretty much the end of her career. But you might be surprised to hear she never quit acting. You've probably seen her starring in something since then, but you just didn't recognize her. These shocking stories prove that even the biggest stars aren't safe. And even this year, a few big stars seem to have totally disappeared from Hollywood. Who are they, and what happened to them? We have the inside scoop. If you don't want to miss out on the big news, click here.